What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 91 of the Noizze Podcast, brought to you by Noizze.co.uk and sponsored by Stereo Brain Records. I am your host / your boy, Chris Bewin. As ever, I'm joined by my very good friend and Mr. Cynical himself, Samuel Lewis. Mate, we're in February already, which is terrifying. How are we?
Yeah, we are very, very well. Living a contented life at the moment. But yeah, February, what the hell, man? How does this keep happening? Like time just moving?
What on earth? Have you had a chance to check out Rala Tomasi's new album yet?
No, are you going to shout at me because I haven't? Because I do like Rala Tomasi.
Hey, dude, we're busy gentlemen. When you get chance, please. It's great. They're really great. Okay. They're a really great band. I'm going to need to listen to it a couple more times to determine whether I prefer that to Erebos by Venom Prison. Two totally different albums in terms of stylistically, but just in terms of the album that I prefer, I need to listen to it a few more times, man. But Rala Tomasi, it's a ridiculous band, and where myth becomes legend, I think you'll really like, man. I really suggest that you listen.
I'll get over it this week, man. Don't worry about it.
Did you ever listen to Paladin, that power metal band I told you that I really got into?
I had a couple of minutes of it, but I wasn't like in the right headspace for that type of music. But I need to revisit.
So much fun, honestly. Like, you know me with power metal. I mean, please, but like, I really like that Paladin album. It's one of those albums that, like, usually when I say something's fun to listen to, that means you can't take it seriously. But there's so much great playing on it, like in terms of the guitar and in terms of rhythm guitar as well. Like, it's so much.
That's all power metal, Chris. Like you'll get that out of any power metal album.
Yeah,
like if you listen to Power Trip, yeah, the guitar. You have to be a stick guitarist to be a power metal guitarist.
Oh, I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying that I don't listen to a lot of power metal, and I think this is what I enjoy. And like, mate, miss me with 80s power metal. I ain't about it.
Oh, because 80s power metal. Yeah, I got you.
Because what it does well, it is okay. Yeah, that's a great lead guitar line, but it's so cheesy and so over the top, and so embarrassing. I can't believe that.
Oh, embarrassing's a harsh term, man. I don't think it's embarrassing. So it's cringy at times. So I'm not embarrassed.
Well, cringy and embarrassed on too far away now.
Yeah, I feel like I feel that cringy is like a 4 out of 10. Embarrassing is like, I wish you had never done this, just so you had never done this, and let alone me witnessing it happening. I just don't want it to have happened to you. Like, you feel like embarrassed, that you feel sorry for the guitarists for making the choices that they made.
Well, it's because it just, like I say, it's so grandiose. It's so silly. And I can't believe there's the concept that, like, people will be walking around, and then, like, if you like Slipknot, like in the late 90s, they'll be like, that's not real metal. Do you know what I mean? Like, you should have listened to Poison. You wait till you hear Poison if you like Slipknot. Do you know what I mean? You're not a real metal fan. This isn't metal. Poison's metal. Do you know what I mean? Like, Winger.
Opinion. Like
Winger. Oh, please.
Yeah. Wasp. Sounds like that.
Stop.
Yeah. It's let's listen to less Machine Head, because Motley Crue are doing things. It's like, man. Also, why the fuck why is there a second series about a member of Motley Crue's life? What is Pam and Tommy in my life? Why is that happening? Like, who decided that was a good idea?
Honestly, that Def Leppard Motley Crue Stadium tour, I don't think there's anywhere else I'd like to be in the world less. There's nowhere I'd like to be less than that stadium tour. No disrespect to anyone who likes Def Leppard and Motley Crue, but it's just not for me at all.
If I said to you, you can have like a painful dental procedure that'll take an hour and a half, but you can be at a Def Leppard Motley Crue gig and that'll take 3 to 4 hours, where are you likely to be?
Where am I likely to have more pain is actually the bigger question. Well, I reference this anecdotally quite often about the fact that, like, I saw Def Leppard headline Download, and I was with a group of people that none of them really knew.
Sobering, I imagine.
None of them really knew at the gates who were headlining the fourth stage, I think. So I had to miss at the gates, because obviously I didn't fancy like going on my own, download 90,000 people. If I can't find my tent or my crew, what am I going to do? Like, so I had to miss at the gates to see Def Leppard, and honestly, after they played Pour Some Sugar on Me, it was the longest longest hour and 10, 20 minutes of my life, man. It was so dull. Like, at that same Download Festival, I saw Die Antwoord, who obviously, they're not together anymore.
Beautiful.
They're not together anymore. Lots of like accusations leveled at some of the members and that kind of thing. So, and then, by the way, they weren't good anyway. But when I was there, like, I thought, this is terrible. This is, but at least it's a little bit exciting. At least there's a little bit going on. There's a few decent bass drops happening by the DJ. Honestly, Def Leppard. You could have, honestly, there could have been a 40,000 people nap going on in the middle of the crowd. It honestly is so lifeless. Dude, I'm not the dentist. I recently had a really tough experience at the dentist. So fine, I'll take Motley Crue and Def Leppard only if you're with me, so that I can laugh, or we can laugh for 3 or 4 hours.
Can't do that, bro. I'm already at the dentist.
You already chose a dentist. You weren't going to be there. Brilliant.
Yeah, I'm in the waiting area, man. Join me over here. Look through some leaflets.
We are the Noizze Podcast. We are a rock and metal show that we come every Tuesday. We're available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. Basically, wherever you get your podcast, me and Sam will be there. The best way you can support us is by subscribing or liking/following, depending on whichever service you are using. On today's episode, we are going to review 2 albums from 2 bands that me and Sam have never listened to before. So I don't think that's ever happened. I think on every previous episode, Sam, the other 90 episodes of the Noizze Podcast we've done, when we do 2 album reviews, we've all, at least one of them, we know a relatively decent amount of material prior. In this scenario, I've never listened to Zeal Ardor or Amorphis before.
Yeah, I think it's tough to say for both bands on a podcast, because I remember us having this conversation with bands like Kid Capiche and stuff like that.
Yeah,
when me and you sort of dove in, we had very limited experience going in, but there's always usually been another band. Yeah,
that's what I mean. Like
some backstory. So, yeah,
if there's one we don't know, we usually know the other one relatively well. But in this case, Zeal Ardor, their self-titled record, and Amorphis Halo are both going to be in discussion on this episode, and we know very little about those bands' material prior to the albums that we're going to discuss. As well as that, as you can see from the title of this episode, I interviewed Ash Gray from Venom Prison, chatted to him about Erebos, the curation process for that, the fantastic detail that goes into their artwork and that kind of stuff. Really interesting chat, so stick around at the end of the episode for that. Follow us on Twitter at Noizze Podcast. Me and Sam both run that account. And do you know what, dude? There was literally no news that came out over the last couple of weeks that I really wanted to mention to you. Corey Taylor made reference to the new Slipknot album. What do you think he said about it?
I actually read this. It's reference to the heaviness again, is it? But this time he said that it's slightly heavier than Volume 3 Subliminal Verses.
Brilliant. You can put a timer on that, can't you? You put a timer on it. The second it gets announced they're in the studio, every 3 months or 4, 5, maybe every 5 months, either Clown or Corey Taylor are going to come out and make some kind of reference to it, either being as heavy as, heavier, or similar to Iowa, self-titled, or Volume 3.
Completely agreed. I'd like to get us a bingo sheet called Slipknot Album Hype Bingo, because in 2 months, I'd like to put a significant amount of money that Corey Taylor does an interview where he talks about the lyrics and how dark and introspective that they are.
Sounds like
that's coming in April. That's coming in April, that is.
It sounds like we're not Slipknot fans. By the way, if you've never listened to us before, we are massive Slipknot fans. It is just a bit daft how every single album cycle, or the curation of an album cycle before an album comes out, it is, hey, it's the heaviest thing we've done since this, or it's heavier than this, and I'm not sure we need it, and it's very, very easy to pick up on, and I find it very hard to take seriously. One day they're going to record an album. It's the whole Boy Who Cried Wolf thing. They're going to record an album that is genuinely heavier, or as heavy as Iowa Volume 3 or self-titled, and we're not going to listen to it on purpose. And it turns out that's going to be the heaviest one.
They're going to have like a social media blackout leading up to it. And it's just going to be like just a drop out of nowhere. And it's going to be like skull crushing. That I would love that, by the way.
Yeah, please, actually, if that could happen.
The next PR move, just don't say anything and just be like, there you go. But also, like, it's always Corey and Clown. Like, I've never been like, like Jay Weinberg's never given an interview being like, yeah, the drums are really good, just like the last one and the one before. It's just I love the band as well. I do. I adore the bones of Slipknot, and I saw a tweet where you had to decide which album you'd rather listen to forever and get rid of the other one between Self-Titled and Slipknot, and it's a struggle to think about, isn't it? And
it is,
those first 2 or 3 albums are just incredible. But yeah, they're becoming a bit caricaturish in the metal world, and that's okay, but it still stymies the love a little.
Hey, the album's going to come out. We're going to listen to it. We're going to like it at the very least. We're going to see him on tour, and the cycle repeats. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, endlessly.
Okay, dude, let's get started. We're going to start with Zeal Ardor's self-titled album. This is the 3rd full length from the Swiss avant-garde metal band. It's out on February 11th via MVKA Records. Zeal Ardor are a band that I'd heard about previously. I saw a lot of people usually mention them on Twitter. Never a band that I'd really checked out before. And it's one of those things, and the same thing I'm going to say for Amorphis later on. I went in with pretty much no expectations, and sometimes that can really work in your favour. And in this case, for Zeal Ardor, let's just get this out there. Really, one of the more unique albums we've reviewed on this podcast. I really don't think we've ever talked about anything like this. Do you remember reviewing Lingua Ignota last year? And we said, regardless of whether you like this or not, you won't have heard anything else like it. Whether you can listen to it and it might not be your thing, but you won't have heard anything else like it. And maybe not the case of you've never heard anything like Zeal Ardor before, but they are quite a unique proposition, aren't they?
Yeah, it's more that you've heard the ingredients, but you've not seen them put together in this nature.
That's a good shout. Before. Yeah, I like that. If I just rattle you 4 bands or 4 artists that I have mentioned in my notes here that I feel like there are moments where it links. Chasing Status, hate to mention him, but Marilyn Manson, Enter Shikari, and Modern Bring Me. Any thoughts on that?
I don't disagree. Can I give you 4 of mine?
Yes.
Korn.
Yeah.
Crunch, Rag and Bone Man, and Svalbard.
Rag and Bone Man is a cracking shout, actually. Yeah, Rag and Bone, Svalbard as well. I like that. Yeah, because the old black metal, like high octane kind of
first 15 seconds of Immersion, mate. That's could be a Svalbard song.
Yeah. So with that, we know very little about Zeal Ardor, but there's 8 there's 8 bands that we listed there that most of them sound nothing like each other. We Enter Shikari and Svalbard in the same conversation of what a band sound like, and Marilyn Manson and Chasing Status and Rag and Bone Man. If you've never heard of Zeal Ardor before,
it'd be an interesting festival lineup, wouldn't it? I'm pretty sure that's Reading and Leeds 2023, isn't it?
You're listening to this thinking, are this band even good? Dude, I think this band are great. I think this is really, really interesting.
I think this is really good. I'm not going to stretch to great, because what I think about this is that it's a jack of all trades, master of none scenario. What I think is that the band are really, really good at blending these styles together, but I'm not actually convinced that they're terrific at any individual one. But I think what I will say is that I think this has a chance to be really impactful, because it blends some stuff together that metal fans wouldn't bring themselves over to, but when it's layered with the kind of stuff that Zeal Ardor do it with, I think it can be really big, because there are moments on some of these choruses across the songs where I'm not just thinking Rag and Bone Man, I'm thinking like Imagine Dragons, I'm thinking like Royal Blood, with that pop sensibility, with like a kind of harsh, that kind of harsh dryness to the vocals. And that's not something a metal fan's ever going to go for. But when every 45 seconds they're playing like black metal, blast beats and stuff, then it gives it kind of like an undercurrent of metal all the time that keeps running back. I think this is really, really good. I think this is really, really interesting. I think obviously it goes to show, as you can imagine, this is a very talented bunch, and they are clearly able to pick and choose what areas and dissections of genres they want to include. And they're in the luxury of being able to do a lot of those very well. But I actually think that the band are at their best when they choose one particular template and stick with it throughout a song, rather than diverting between. There are a couple of moments that we've talked to in sort of detail of this, but there's a few songs on here where I'm thinking, oh, if you could just do that for another 15 seconds without going to another genre. Oh, if you could just stay there. And the songs where they do stay there, I think are the highlights. But I too often find that they're not switching for switching's sake, but it does feel a very frenetic pace that sometimes I think dilutes their overall impact. But that being said, I think that they have a chance to kind of take metal by storm a little bit, because they have the kind of unique and easily identifiable sound because of the combination of stuff that's really gonna pique metal fans' interest. And like I said, they're packaging what is usually a pop melody, which is in sort of like wrapping it in metal a little bit and then giving it to metal fans, which has always worked. The greatest metal bands ever have always essentially been pop bands that they've then, layered it with all the stuff that they're also good at. It's why I think Sleep Token are great. At its heart, Sleep Token are a great pop band.
Yeah.
I think they've just layered it with all this other stuff that wins metal fans over. But metal fans always love to have a sing and have a ballad and have a dance. They just like some riffs there as well. And I think Zeal and Ardor have hit that. That's as fair. Well. I think they could also get played on Radio 1. This is some of these songs sort of transition across. So I think they're the chance to be really, really big. They've already had a Metal Hammer cover as well, haven't they? So on the up.
From the research I've done, Zeal and Ardor is primarily the brainchild of Manuel Gagno. He recorded all instruments on this album except the drums. So pretty much what we're hearing is not quite a Beartooth scenario, but a scenario where it's pretty much, from what I've researched, his vision. And I've got to say that I kind of reference the Beartooth scenario there. Zeal Ardor and Beartooth, not just stylistically, couldn't be further apart, but also couldn't be further apart in the sense of, I could tell you what the next 3 Beartooth albums sounds like now.
All the songs sound different for a start.
Yeah, I can tell you. I can tell you what the next 3 Beartooth albums are going to sound like now. Where Zeal Ardor, dude, seriously, when one song would come. So, for example, Run, Death to the Holy, Immersion, Golden Lawyer, Erase. They're with the title track, which is like an interlude. Not counting. Those are the opening 5 songs. They sound nothing like each other. They're all like totally different. Like Death to the Holy is more of a like hip hop kind of Run the Jewels opening. You mentioned Immersion, which you felt like could have been done by Svalbard. I got a big transient, lush kind of Enter Shikari tone from that. Golden Lawyer is like a Southern Rock ZZ Top monologue. It's with this kind of really rustic riff, really unusual. Erase is like, gives you this kind of red herring of beauty before a black metal rasp explodes out the gates. Literally, like, this album is whack-a-mole of genre, but not in the sense of it's the kitchen sink and nothing works. You say you think this is really good. I would say 8 out of 10 if you force me to grade this album. We don't do that anymore, but if I was forced, I would say 8. I do think this is great, and one of the reasons why I think it's great is because, literally, I mean, what could possibly be next? And yet what does come next, you didn't predict, and is still accomplished well.
Yeah, I think this is, I think the variety is obviously the spice of that. I'm interested to see what direction they take this moving forward. I also like you mentioned of the main songwriter, Manuel Gagno, that I love that sounds like a complete sentence about a man being attacked by another person called Manuel. Manuel, God, no. But the rest of it, like, I don't care, man. I couldn't. It's either be in there. It needs to come out. But like, I completely agree. Like, I was thinking every time I heard a song, I made like a completely different judgment about the type of band that they were, and then the next song completely erased that going in. And like I say, like, without talking about ourselves in this kind of way, typically we've heard a lot of stuff, so usually my feelings on what the blueprint is tend to be pretty close, and so this is surprising when bands sort of like divert from that as often as they do. But I agree with you, like the open here Run, great toms, and I was immediately thinking, okay, they're new metal-y, bit of Five Finger Death Punch, but less embarrassing. And then it flicks into this sort of like black metal groove that completely changes the pace. I was thinking, all right, maybe the bit of early Korn, maybe there's a little bit of new metal core going on in here in terms of the harshness and the heaviness. Great, good metal band. I know what I'm getting now. You're right, Death to the Holy. His voice at the start sounds like early Kings of Leon. That kind of like
Yeah.
I really wouldn't need to an impersonation, you know.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
If you listen to this album based on anything at all, don't base it on that last 15 seconds.
Oh.
But like the idea that like he sort of wavers around the notes rather than sticking to it, he's got that sort of Kings of Leon type of vibe. But then, like you say, there's like a spoken word bit that again, I was thinking this is like King Gate 10, but again, less corny. And then the breakdown at the end is really, really terrific. Immersion does the same thing in the sense of like, I'm completely shifted away. The atmosphere is wonderful. I thought that was a real highlight, Immersion, because of the relationship between some of the melodies that were layered underneath. I felt this is what we're talking about when we had some of the breakdowns were a bit simplistic and some of the melodies that were being used were a bit simplistic over it. So that's what I was thinking. I was like, this is metal, but like kind of like an intermediate version of metal, where it's like there was a few moments where it was a bit repetitive, and you could kind of tell that without, again, like the band a lot, you can kind of tell that's not what they do all the time. They're not purely metal musicians that do metal all the time. It's like, here's a bit of metal, do you know what I mean? It kind of felt like a tapas selection of heavy music, and that's where I think their strengths were when they actually varied away from that, actually went to what I thought they're really good at, which is on Golden Liar, which is a classic rock and roll, smoky clubhouse, beautiful melody. It's a great rock song.
Yeah.
And now I think they're a better rock band than they are a metal band on this. And I think that's where their strength is. When you hear like Erase, which feels like classic black metal with some death metal working behind, the talent is evident. And this is what I'm talking about. What they did in the opening part of Erase was they played that high-pitched guitar melody over the breakdown. And then in the second half of the song, they played the same melody, but it was a discorded version, but it followed the same syncopation. It followed the same like tone. And it felt repetitive, and it felt like, oh, we need to do something there. Let's just vary this slightly for sort of like layered and like sort of character development within the melody and things like that. And I felt like if you handed that to a metal band, that we might have had a more creative sense there. But that being said, the metal band can't do what these guys can do on songs like Bow and Feed the Machine, where it fits between like bluesy rock. Feed the Machine is terrific. Like,
yeah, it's amazing. That song is.
And a black metal song just altered together, and it keeps swapping between, and that's the balance that works. I Caught You guitar sound of maybe a bit of St. Anger in the guitar sound, the way that kind of like bends the string and heads back to the note and that type of stuff. Love that. And there's so many moments here where I'm like, oh, here's a little bit like that. His vocal range is so impressive.
Incredible. Manuel's vocals are astonishing.
Amazing. There's moments on this when I hear like Got a Damarung, I think is what I'm gonna pronounce.
Yeah, the German one.
Yeah, well, it's shades of like Maynard Keen from Tool over the sort of like the light melodies over something really, really heavy.
Yeah.
And then just absolutely fantastic clean riffs and just really, really, really good. When it's simple, when they find a blueprint and really stick with it, like on I Caught You, like with Golden Liar, I think that's where the band at their strength, when they have a complete identity around one theme. I like the variety, but I prefer it on like a track by track basis rather than like a 30-second to 30-second basis.
It's interesting you mentioned that. It's interesting you mentioned that because as I was reading about the album, Manuel had said in an interview that instead of really picking apart the album and they wrote this part, but he wrote this part and then he thought, is that good enough? He would just go with his first instinct and kind of stick to it. And there is a simplicity to this album, isn't there? And the simplicity, and I really do mean that as a compliment. Like this album, in a lot of the songs, in terms of this, how can I say this? It's like criticism. Not a lot goes on in a lot of the songs, but I don't mean that in the criticism. I mean that in the terms of they lay a hook and they loop it around some different fusion of ideas. And there's like 5 or 6 different things that happen in the song, and that's it. But it works because the hook that they lay and loop around is usually brilliant. For example, on Death to the Holy, a lot of Death to the Holy is centered around this growl of Death to the Holy, like the title, the title of the track, sorry. It works. When the breakdown comes back in after the drum fill with the Death to the Holy growl going on in the background, it's amazing. Even though it's happened for most of the song, it still feels amazing. There's a really, really cool moment as well, and you kind of referenced it earlier when it was on I Caught You. Those cold orange atmospherics, mate. You must have thought of me when that come in.
Yeah.
When they dropped those atmospherics in and they went a bit cold orange, you knew. You must have been thinking, Chris is bouncing around somewhere right now listening to this, because that bit is amazing on I Caught You.
I completely agree. For me, the ones that where they really went through were like when you get the second half of I Caught You, when they just unleash the rage of the riff for once, and it feels like for the majority of the album, we're getting stuff. Like you say, it was a bit muted. Like Death to the Holy, for breakdowns like that, most metal bands are pushing that right to the front. It felt like that riff was kind of like just secondary to the little electronic sound. It was quite muted. And that's an interesting selection, certainly different to what I would usually sort of get from bands like that. I agree that this is really good. This is really creative. This is well written, and man, we just want something interesting, and this is absolutely that, something that's individual and unique and clearly true to himself. I'll be interested to see if he continues the switch between the metal and the bluesy stuff moving forward, and how that transpires. I think the strength lies when they're a straight up rock band and a metal and like sort of bluesy stuff. But I like the idea that they include the metal stuff as like a kind of change of pace down the line. It's really good. It's really good. I can see quite a bright future for this band. Also, the name is incredible. Zeal Ardor is an amazing name. It's beautiful. It's perfect. It's just really, really good. So I think this band have a chance to be quite impactful in 2022. They could be one of the bands that we talk about this time next year as having an impact across this year. And the variety and the musicality of this is incredibly impressive. Really incredibly impressive. Like we said earlier, if you're talking about like Run the Jewels, Enter Shikari, but also more traditional metal acts like Korn, then all those combined together has a chance to be a really sort of uniting type of release.
Well, how important are a band like this to metal? Because the question isn't who couldn't this band be on a support bill for? Well, outside of extreme metal, who couldn't they support really? Do you know what I mean? And that is a cool thing. Who couldn't they support? Could Sleep Token and Zeal Ardor do a co-headline show? Definitely.
That could both sub-headline Bring Me the Horizon. I'd take that directly from a dream that I could have.
Yeah, definitely.
That'd be utterly phenomenal. These guys could support Architects.
Yeah, definitely.
But quite easily. That's the thing. They're not particularly tied down to a particular genre or a particular idea or even a particular theme. And I think that might be some of the directions that we end up going in. These kind of hybrid bands are starting to crop up a little bit more often, where rather than a specific "we are this," you are starting to get bands that are stretching their sound out and extending that palette. Sleep Token are a good example of that, and I think over time we're gonna include Zeal Ardor in that, and I think that's really, 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 really great for the genre, like you said, really, really great for the industry. And again, this band are going to be introducing metal fans to a type of pop and melody that actually now feels acceptable, and that is typically a path to quite large success. So I can see this working for them as well. They're impressive.
Just a closing note from me. You want to know how impressive this album is? There's a song in here called Church Burns, and there's also a song about 6-7 minutes later, another 2 or 3 tracks later called JMB, and they sound like 2 completely different bands. You could definitely be convinced that there were 2 different bands, or maybe there was one person that borrowed from the band that did Church Burns to come and do JMB, but they sound like 2 different bands. It's not very often you can say that, and both tracks really work, and both tracks are great. I think this is a really, really impressive album. I would say Zeal Ardor, they're going to be very, very important for the future of metal. I think they're gonna not catch on fire in the sense of like Metallica or anything like that. They're gonna catch on fire relative to success of what they can achieve. And I think that we're going to be looking at a band that within another album or so hits Academy level. And that's the coolest thing, because once you're in 2,000 capacity venues, we're really moving, and they can do something really cool for metal. I'm all about this. Zeal Ardor self-titled album, great. I'm going to check out their other 2 records. They're really good.
Yeah, they're officially on the zeitgeist, aren't they? They're officially part of the conversation. I think I think it's just really, really nice to have bands that are not so easily identifiable. And I think that's really great for the industry and really great for folks like us, let's be honest.
We are going to move on to the final topic of the show before my interview with Ash from Venom Prison comes in. Let's move on to Amorphis Halo. It's out on February 11th via Atomic Fire Records. It is the Finnish band's 14th studio album and the follow-up to 2018's Queen of Time. When you're listening to a band for the first time, Sam, and they're on their 14th album, that is quite an experience. And I guess it's also fairly daunting because when you've got no headspace for comparison, I suppose your only possible hope is that you enjoy the record. When you listen to a band for the first time and they're 14 albums in, you would expect them to be really, really set on their style. And you're listening thinking, right, okay, is this the best they've been or the best they could possibly be now? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think within 15 seconds, I could tell you what the rest of their discography sounded like.
Yeah, I mean, within the first few minutes, it's quite clear like what the blueprint could possibly have been. Although I cannot say that for certain because this is the first Amorphis record I've listened to.
We can only speculate.
I can only speculate, but I'm fairly confident. What I will say, Sam, is I would go into this with no headspace for comparison. I suppose the only possible hope is that I would enjoy it. I think this is good. I like this.
Yeah, I think this is enjoyable. I think this is fun. I think this has a lot of moments where I'm like, all right, okay, all right, let's get the cat out of the bag. It's what are we going to call this? Is this power metal? Is this prog metal? Is this black metal? Is this like a kind of trio of the three? Where are we putting this?
I would say it's specifically pitched to be that trio: power, prog, and black metal. That's specifically what it's going for.
All right.
And you know what, dude? The power metal is. I don't mind the power metal.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely it's decent. It's good power metal. And there's some real nice highlights here. It's like Final Fantasy music at times, though. Like it's game soundtrack stuff at times, isn't it? And it's epic and it's large and it's complex and things like that. And there are simple melodies and stuff like that. Big choruses. And if you're a power metal aficionado and you're into that type of thing, like consistently, I think you're gonna enjoy this. I enjoyed this as a listener. Just stick it in the background. It wasn't offensive. Like it didn't require any struggle. And there were some moments here that I really enjoyed. I'm gonna start with the positives. Number one, the title track Halo is a banger.
Yeah, man, bad boy tune. Yeah.
Number one, really, really great. The change of the chords behind the opening guitar riff, which, by the way, they have found a pedal that says something along the lines of a guitar note that is clearer than the bell on a bright summer's day with a winter breeze, because it just cuts through the mix every single time. And I've never heard a more clear guitar than this on this. This tone is just like angelically perfect, like almost imperfect. That's how perfect it is. It's astonishing. So I'm going to start there. There are some really, really nice moments of melody and some really, really big choruses. But my main issue with this is the fact that sometimes I listen to the choruses and think that needs a bit more of an edge. And then sometimes I listen to the verses and I think that needs to be a bit softer, like vocally. So what I mean by that is sometimes you get their second vocalist. So I assume it's their second vocalist who adds the black metal growling.
No, they've got one vocalist.
Okay, well then interesting. Then when he shifts to that style, he does the black metal growling, but often the verses are quite low key. That contrast feels strange to me as a listener. There's like a weird juxtaposition when I was listening to them, and there was this section where it was like a normal verse, it was closed hi-hat stuff. They were playing like this kind of like jazzy type, and he was growling over the top of it, and it was like a weird blend. Whereas later, the chorus got really melodic, and it was almost too perfect and too melodic and too sort of like cushiony and sweet and cushy. And I was like, just give me a bit of an edge. And actually one of the songs where they actually found that balance was perfect on Halo, because they had the chorus and they had the lovely vocal melody, but then they were adding that second vocalist there at times to shift it away. And I think sometimes the balance isn't quite right. If you like a Monomarth, this sounds like a softer version of a Monomarth as well, because it's got that kind of sweeping guitar sound.
Well, I was going to ask you if you thought this would equate to metal Volbeat.
A little bit, but a little bit further than that. It kind of feels a bit like, I think it's closer to like the Dragon Forces of the world than it is a Volbeat.
I hate Dragon Ball.
No, but you can.
No, I see what you mean. No, I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
Because because like, no, it can't be like that.
No, I do see what you mean.
Yeah, so that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like to me. Like, especially when you hear like the synth solos and stuff, that's not something that you would hear sort of anywhere else. Couple of mentions to Between the Buried and Me, because I was, the moment I hear a synth solo, I'm like, okay, that says a bit like that. But it sounded a bit like power metal version of sort of like late era Deep Purple when I started experimenting prog as well. I just think sometimes that the songs are a little bit corny. I think they're like The Moon, like it could be a song written for Zelda. Like that's what it feels like to me. Like, and it's perfectly good, and some of the musicianship is really, really interesting and really, really well worked. And when it's good, it's very good at what it does particularly. But I think too often it goes back to a kind of like an already heard well, if that makes sense. Like, too often I'm hearing songs, it's like, okay, all right, slow riff, chugging riff, growls, up-tempo chorus, melody, guitar, comedy guitar, back to growls. And it's like, it does follow a blueprint, and a blueprint that I've heard a few times before, and they're not, particularly excellent at. So I think for this, it's a good album, and if you really like the genre, you're really going to like it. It's an enjoyable listen. And like I said, like Halo, legitimately, I really, really like that song. I was like jigging around the room, like while I was like tidying up listening to it. Like, yeah, this is like really good. Like you could go on a run for this or whatever. Like it's good music. The rest of it does err on the cheesy side for me, and that's where it sort of starts to dampen my enthusiasm somewhat.
I feel like it manages, for me personally, to just sit right in front of the edge between emphatic, cinematic, and cheesy. I don't feel like, for me, it ever actually crosses into the kind of cheesy area of the Venn diagram. I like this. I think there are moments of this album where, like, you just can't deny that it's like fun to listen to. Like, you mentioned The Moon. You mentioned The Moon, and you was like, oh, yeah, this good soundtrack Zelda. Mate, the opening guitar line is so good. Like, I'm in love with the opening guitar line. And
when he's growling over the jazzy chords on that song, though, do you not think it's a bit weird? It is a bit weird.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because as I was like getting my notes, I've listened to this album a few times. As I was getting my notes down for it, it did hit me that I thought the first three songs have all followed the same formula of like a cool opening riff, a blast of harsh vocals, clean chorus, intriguing instrumental, climactic chorus. And the three opening songs literally do that. They sound different in how they accomplish it, but they accomplish those things each individually in a row, literally in that order for the first three songs. And I thought, I am worried that by song 6, if they keep doing this, I'm going to have this feel like it's a long hour. Luckily, when Windmane comes in, it's like more of a tribal sound, like the tiniest fleck of Gajira, like in that way the toms and the cymbals are used for like a tribal sound. It's much more
flute. I mean,
flute. It's much more poised, and like it's got a more of a fluctuating tonality than anything that precedes it. I've got to mention the lead guitarist, and I believe I'm going to pronounce his name as Esa Holopainen. Yeah, Esa Holopainen, I believe is how you would pronounce his name. Although I do apologise if I was wrong there. Dude, some of the riffs he drops out on this, so good.
Some of the high-pitched guitar melodies are beautiful.
Like when the gods came, that like really cinematic intro. I do get what you mean. A little bit grandiose, a little bit Avengers-esque, but you can almost sense how well that would go down live, especially with the band's fan base. Tommy Yeltsin is the name of the vocalist. Now I've said they've only got one vocalist. I do believe that they might have like a backing vocalist for like the dual layered vocals, but I do believe he is the vocalist. And as if I am wrong there, and there's an Amorphis fan listening to this, please correct me in the comments. But from the research I've done, I'm fairly certain it's Tommy Yeltsin that does the vocals. And when you get into the power metal sections, I'd imagine you were listening to this and thinking, right, Chris is annoyed at this point, especially with it right at the start of the episode. I was talking about how much power metal can bother me, especially 80s power metal. But actually, I find this really fun. Like the Power Paladin record that I mentioned at the start of the episode, I find it really fun. I don't see how you could listen to a song like When the Gods Came and not genuinely enjoy it. Seven Roads Came Together, the song after When the Gods Came, for me is the best track on the album. It's got the best opening to a track on the entire record. That clean guitar riff comes in, could definitely soundtrack Flash Gordon coming to save the day. It's amazing. There's this epic build in the middle eight to the clean vocals in front of the power riff. You've got to love it. You've got to love it. When I come round yours in 45 minutes, we're going to chuck on. I'm coming around yours in 4 or 5 minutes. We're going to chuck on Seven Roads Come Together, right? And I'm telling you, we're going to love it. This album, I think it's really. I really like this. It's so much fun.
It's an enjoyable listen.
Will you just go off your cynical perch for 10 minutes?
Maybe I am cynical. Maybe I am cynical after all. It's just the name has stuck for 4 years. But when we came across the track War and it was a Middle Eastern melody at the start, I was like, of course. This one about Afghanistan, is it, lads? Jesus Christ. And sometimes the cliches were like bang on, man. That's all I'm saying. Like, I've got no issue with it, but tell me this is not the soundtrack to a turn-based fantasy game from 1999 at times. I'm telling you, it is. But
it is. And there's no. But yeah, it is. You are right.
Yeah, I'm not like turn-based fantasy games from 99. Posters on my wall dedicated to it. But no, I want to say, like, jokes aside, if you are an Amorphis fan, I'm just gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that the first 13 albums were similar to this one, and I think that this next one is probably gonna, tickle the same musical bones than the previous ones have. I think you're gonna be buzzing. I think Halo, like I said, I keep talking about Halo's really, really good. The Wolf's really, really good. We haven't talked about the Wolf.
Yeah, thick chugging lead riff, love it.
Riff at the start is fantastic, lovely melody, and actually, after Halo, I felt that the rest of the album actually lifted as a result. I also think My Name Is Right, the ballad at the end, it's beautiful. Some guitar work on that is absolutely gorgeous. And at the start, on the Dark Waters and Northwards, I think they're great prog leading into black metal. That black metal song's really, really, really good. Musicianship is really nice. Like I said, really well mixed, beautifully clean. Classic Scandinavian mixing, if you know what I mean. That just
I do know what you mean.
Across the board, just clear cut, beautiful piano, really well balanced together. It's a good power metal album. It's a good power metal album. I cannot say other than that at all.
That is where we are going to leave off episode 91 of the Noizze Podcast before my interview with Ash Gray from Venom Prison comes in. Thank you so much for listening. The best way to support us is by subscribing / liking or following, depending on whichever service you are using. Me and Sam are going to be back in 2 weeks' time. Not entirely sure what we're going to be reviewing just yet. Need to check the album release schedule, but we will be back regardless. Thank you for listening. My interview with Ash Gray comes up right now. Follow us on Twitter at Noizze Podcast. Subscribe, like, or follow. Thank you very much. We will see you in 2 weeks' time. We love you. Bye. So I'm now joined by Ash Gray, guitarist in Venom Prison. Mate, how are you? Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It's a real pleasure.
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Mate, I'm doing everything I can to not make this 30 minutes of gaming chat. Because I used to write for Distorted Sound, and I used to read your like Ash Plays series. I remember you did one on Death Stranding, and I love Death Stranding, and I was really finding it difficult to find someone else that was into it. And when I saw that you'd put like your piece up, I was like, you know what? As long as Ash Gray likes it, and I do, that's fine. That's fine. We'll stand for Kojima.
It's a brilliant game. It's awesome. A brilliant game. Like, anyone that was saying it's a walking sim is an idiot. It is not a walking sim.
Well,
it is the best story written game I think I've ever played since like early Metal Gear and Final Fantasy.
Well, I'm like a Kojima obsessive, I am. So I suppose it's kind of difficult for me to be objective when I talk about Kojima games, because he was so pivotal in my childhood, basically. I mean, one of the first games I ever picked up was Metal Gear Solid 2. And I was just like, I can't believe this is what games are. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that was in 2002. And I was like, I can't believe this is games. Like previously, I was like Nintendo 64, like Super Mario and that kind of stuff. Played Metal Gear Solid 2, and I was like, man, I can't believe this is what games can be. So it's very difficult for me to criticize Kojima, but I genuinely thought Death Stranding was awesome, man. Like it came out in 2019. So in 2019, how many times have you ever said this game is unlike anything else? Do you know what I mean? But the game is genuinely like anything else.
Oh, it was incredible. Like absolutely, like the story when it starts to break in midway into the game and it all starts to like reveal itself, and you're just like, here we go. And it's just from that moment, you just know you're just in. Like it's just in from that moment. But brilliant.
Kojima's got like an amazing way of doing a lot with a little, in a sense of like, when you describe to someone what Death Stranding really is, like, you know, you're a delivery man delivering packages around America. That sounds boring, doesn't it? You'd be like, what? That doesn't sound like a game. How have they made a game out of that? But somehow they made, like, Kojima made this 120-hour like experience there, man. It's just genius, man. So good.
Yeah, honestly, you're making me want to play it again now.
I'll tell you what, I've said that I've done my best to not make this about gaming, but I couldn't, knowing I was chatting to you, I couldn't not open with a gaming question. I was curious what you thought about the Microsoft and Activision Blizzard merger, and like maybe your thoughts on the potential monopolization of the gaming industry.
Well, it's all the stuff like Activision Blizzard and all that. Like, I don't really bother with any of that, if I'm honest. Like, I've got to be honest, I'm really simple when it comes to games. Like, I play a lot of games, but if it's got Square Enix on the case, I'm probably sold. Like, I literally just want to play things like Nier Automata, Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy.
Wicked.
Like, doing that Guardians of the Galaxy at the moment, the Square Enix one, like, brilliant. Like, that's kind of, I've never really been that World of Warcraft guy or COD guy as such. Like, I dabble in it, I'll play in it, but I mean, yeah, the merge thing. I just, like, what are they even aiming to do with it? Like, I know they're merging, but like, is it transactions to like literally everything within it?
Well, I mean, I've said merge. I'm not sure whether I've used the right terminology. I mean, it's a purchase. Like Microsoft own Activision and Blizzard now, and I think like my concern, and I'm a PlayStation guy, so I suppose you take this with a pinch of salt. But I genuinely believe I'd be worried if PlayStation did this as well, because I really feel like if Microsoft own Bethesda and Activision and Blizzard now, that is an absurd amount of studios working for one company. And I just worry how that gets handled, in the sense of like Toys for Bob, like a small studio like that. Like, what are they going to do with them? Like, they've got like 200 studios working for them. What, they're going to get Toys for Bob to be doing? Do you know what I mean? Who are this really talented studio? I really feel there's a decent chance that some studios are going to be like, can you just make maps for Call of Duty for the next 10 years? And that'd be great. And then don't worry, if you've got plans to do a game, we'll worry about that in decade 2040. For now, just make maps for COD, please. Do you know what I mean?
I wonder if it'll just be a year exclusive though, because like they always say something's exclusive and a year later it gets released on to the other platforms, you know?
Yeah, that is a good point as well.
I just can't see, like, I know Bethesda has said they've gone with them and, you know, that's a done deal type thing. But I can't see Bethesda saying that we'll never release it on anything else when people have been playing Fallout and Skyrim and whatever on, you know, other consoles other than an Xbox, for example. But I just can't see it being a full forever exclusive. I reckon it will drop out at some point. There's going to have to be something, because it's way too much money for them to lose.
Does the idea of a monopolization in the gaming industry as a general concept worry you?
Yeah, I mean, it does get a bit ridiculous. Like, I've kind of bought the new Xbox, the PS5 and the Switch. And it's not because I was like, oh, I need them. It just generally is, I'm a gamer who likes certain games on platforms. Like, if I go for Monster Hunter, I go straight to the Switch.
Yeah, I get that.
You know,
yeah.
Like, and to see a new Zelda come out, that's a big deal for me. So it's like, to not have those specific consoles that have that is like such a big deal. And I think what I do admire about the PS5 is that even though I do have the Xbox, they have the Game Pass, and they're having a lot of day one releases go straight to the pass, and you know, Bethesda and everything we're talking about then. But I think the PS5 is going back to the PS3 era, where it's just not going to release quantity; it's only going to release quality.
Yeah, I get that.
I don't think they're going to be releasing game after game after game, but I think what they will be releasing, it's like, what did Xbox have at the time that, you know, PS3 had like the first Uncharted? Like those games were like leagues above anything Xbox 360 was putting out, you know, even their exclusives as such. But
yeah,
you know, The Last of Us on the PS3. So I think as long as PlayStation stick to that, I think I'll be on board with that more so than just, you know, Xbox just having everything on a Game Pass and just oversaturating it. It's like Netflix. I don't know what to play. Like, I've got it. I you know, I use my Game Pass, but like, I got to be honest, I do sit there some nights going, I don't know what to play. Like,
yeah.
For the PS5, I turn it on and I either go on Returnal or Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's like, you know, it's a good time on both.
Oh, mate, you know, you've mentioned Returnal, so I've got to chat to you about it now. I really will start talking to you about music in a second. And I genuinely think, I mean, I'm a massive Dark Souls fan. Cannot wait for Elden Ring next month. I genuinely think Returnal is the hardest game I've ever played. You know, it is, it's so punishing and yet really addictive. I will be honest, I got to like the third world and it's been a while since I played it now, but there's just something like obsessive about that game that is, again, like unlike anything else I've played, but I genuinely think it's. I think apparently like the Ninja Gaidens were like impossible back in the day. They were a bit before my time. They were, but like it's the hardest game I've ever played, and I'm like a Dark Souls like nut. I adore it. So man, honestly, Returnal is something else, man.
So you're on the third biome.
Yeah, the third biome. Yeah, that's the right terminology. Third biome.
So Nemesis.
Yeah.
Have you seen him yet?
Yeah, he kicks my ass, mate.
Yeah. Don't worry. I've been there for a month. I'm still there.
Mate, it's solid.
I'm still there, and I refuse to like stop. Like I'm just like, right, we're going in for a run. We're going in. But I think I'm kind of starting to unlock a lot of stuff because I keep playing it, even though I'm not progressing. And I think I'm starting to go over the old bosses again and pick up more data cubes and start unlocking a lot of stuff. So I'm starting to get through the areas a lot smoother because I've got a lot more stuff going on.
Right. Okay. Patience. My patience is gonna have to be key there. Just like a Dark Souls game, really. I'm gonna have to keep cracking. But I forgot what I was playing for a while, and then a new game came out. I forgot which one it was, and I kind of put it to the side, and now it's been like 4 months since I played it. And Returnal's one of them games there. The next time I play Returnal, I'm going to find it like almost impossible because I'll have had 3, 4, 5, 6 months off. And that's a game that you need to be consistent with, man, because it's so difficult.
Yeah, it's a game that it wants you to learn. Like it wants you to learn like everything that it can do constantly, especially when even in the third biome, like you get closer to the, you know, boss door, and some of the bits are just so overwhelming. Like you just like, I'm just sat there and I'm generally just like breathing and just going like
yeah,
like this is something else. But no, very good.
Got to talk to you about music. But myself and my co-host Sam saw Venom Prison when you opened for Trivium on that amazing Metal Hammer tour in, I believe it was 2017, when it was with Power Trip and Code Orange. I'd heard of you at that point, but not really delved into Venom Prison too much. Me and Sam kind of turned to each other once you'd finished your set, and there was a real acknowledgement from both of us. So we're like, that band's going to do something special at some point in their career. Like they're on their first album there, they're touring it. There's something about them. They'll do something great. I'm assuming at that point, that was the biggest tour you'd ever been on. Looking back, does that tour feel like anything of a turning point for you? Because the legacy of Trivium, the size of the tour that you played on, the fact it was backed by Metal Hammer, which is probably the most popular metal publication that we've got in the zeitgeist at the moment. Looking back, do you think that was a turning point or anything for you?
Yeah, I think it was really good for us. We learned a lot on that tour. Like, I think even, you know, the exposure element of it, but even just internally as a band, like we learned so much about, you know, how to kind of like make a band run, if you know what I mean. We were kind of always like seeing how, you know, Trivium, for example, are doing their things, and obviously they're doing it on a massive scale compared to what we were doing. But it was like little things you were picking up and just kind of seeing how things are going and how things work. And even just watching those bands every night, you just like subconsciously taking everything in. And I think you do just learn from that experience. And as soon as you have it, you can just kind of figure ways to, you know, utilize it and grow your band with stuff you've learned, you know.
This is me taking like an interpretation as a fan, but you've always like struck me as a band that adore music, but want to involve yourself with the industry aspect of music as little as possible. But the band has really started to expand over the last 4 years. So I suppose now you're forced to make industry type decisions. Is that a fair assessment that I've made? Like how would you manage to still come across as this really relatable independent band, as well as a band that is business savvy and making moves?
I think the message and what the band has always stood for has never ever changed. And I also feel that everyone in the band really got, you know, both feet on the grind. I think we've always been a band that's had our feet on the grind. I think that's why I think a lot of people kind of like Venom Prison as such, because I think they get that we're not trying to be anyone different or anyone bigger or anything. All we want to do is just see, you know, we're just basically trying to see how well Venom Prison can do with, you know, just the work that we've been putting in. Like on a personal level, my life hasn't really changed. Like neither has anyone else in the band. Like Ben's, ever since Venom Prison's been going, Ben's, you know, a manager of mental health units in Bristol, like 3-4 of them. Like he looks after and runs them. You know, I work in I've just started recently where I'm sorting like junior apprentices in like arts and creatives, like making like criterion units for them to learn and pick up qualifications. And everyone, you know, everyone's always been that way inclined. I don't think anyone's ever had that, like, you know, I don't know the word to use, like that glam side to us. We've never been a very glamorous band as such. Like we do, you know, go into all these press, you know, outlets as such and covers or whatever, but we never really glamorize ourselves in it. Like we're very straight to the point with how we want to kind of Venom Prison to be presented and almost the aesthetics to it, if that makes sense.
Something that's always like set you apart literally from day one from your peers is of course your artwork, which the artwork almost feels like a sixth member of Venom Prison because it's just so unique and so intelligent in the way that it's the message that each piece of artwork for each record tends to get across. I'm just curious, was the idea always to have something that really like thought-provoking, this demanding artwork that forced you to be different from your peers? Or did you just see Eliran's first piece of work and figure out that was what you'd always want going forward?
We always knew that like to kind of get a message across, you know, and something that's very, you know, heavy on the lyrical side of stuff and even music, very aggressive music, you kind of build this aesthetic and this imagery up to it. And I think when we went to Eliran, we would send him this is the first time, so Animus, the first record he did with us. And I think we gave him the lyrics and we gave him the pre-productions. And then he came back to us a couple of weeks later and was like, I've basically just read your lyrics over and over again. I've listened to the music over and over again. And this section here grabs me. And it was the genital mutilation. And he was like, I need to paint it. And
that's
I was
so
like,
cool.
I was like, we need to paint it. And like, that's what he did. And
man, that's so cool.
We would talk about the mythology of stuff, like, especially when we got to Samsara, we talk about like, you know, all the different themes of that mythology that all links in together. We would talk about all the lyrics and like, overall as a picture, what would visualize that moment. So like animus means hate, and ripping off someone's, you know, genitals and a thing is pretty hateful, and seeing it with your own eyes is also even more hateful.
Yeah.
But then it's like the rebirth cycle of like, you know, the spider eggs and stuff on Samsara, and like, yeah, it's like it's always got something. And then Erebus also follows a very similar, you know, formula as such. And we just kind of always wanted to have that. Like, I think we've been really close with Eleran ever since Animus, really, and we talk all the time, and I generally just like working with him. Like, I really enjoy it every time we like get, into the creative side of stuff. He's always, super hands-on with it, and just like, I've got this idea, and then you'll listen, and it's always, it's good. It's just general, freedom of creativity. But because he gets our idea and we get his ideas, it just comes to what you said, the 6-member type thing.
Man, that is the coolest story. That is the coolest story. I love that so much. I always knew there'd be something really unique and cool about how your artwork came together. That is the fact that he read the lyrics, like, I need to paint this. That's the coolest, man. Like, what a nod for you to get, like, on your first record, that the person you've gone to for artwork, it has to paint it because he's been so captured, man. That's so cool.
Yeah, and it's like that's kind of like the way it kind of goes so hand in hand with the artwork. Like, I mean, I don't know factually, but I'm sure there's bands who just buy stock artwork. And for me, it's like the visual and the sound side is just as important as each other, I think having that artwork to belong with that sound is why it is so, together as such, because it's built together and it's meant for each other, where it's not like some bands would buy like stock artwork or just take a photograph of something and go, hey, cool photograph. But no, this artwork means something to those songs.
Every band wants the next album to be bigger and better. That goes without saying. But Erebos really is, for me, your finest moment so far. Just an excellent death metal record. I'm fully in love with it. I'm just curious, is this like, do you feel this is just the sound of a band being at their peak at the moment, captured on tape? Or did you specifically go into this record with ideas that you knew would take you to the next step? I mean, I've got another question about Pain of Oasis coming up in a second, but I'm just curious whether you went in with an idea, like, if we do this, it will take us to the next step, or is this purely like you're at your peak at the moment and you've captured it in 60 minutes?
Yeah, it was more of a planned. It was definitely planned as such. Like, we're very good on that sense of things. Like, we always want to make sure we're doing something that has a purpose and an aim to it. Like, sometimes it ends up better than we expected as such. Sometimes it doesn't. But I think the best thing with Erebus is, before we started writing Erebus, me and Ben and Larissa, I remember we were all together, and it was like, what are we going to do with Erebus? I remember we just said to each other, we were like, we're going to write songs. And I was like, oh, okay, I know what that, like, when awesome. when you say that word to Venom Prison, it means something, because like, normally we just press play and then it's just an assault of riffs and heaviness for like 4 minutes. But then when you go, right, it's a song, I'm like, ooh, no, that's different. So, well, I already knew that we were going to be talking about structuring, which was absolutely fine. I kind of really enjoyed that element of it, because there were many moments in the past where I thought, maybe that could have been longer, or maybe that could have come back, or maybe we could have done this, where I thought, right, Erebus, it's going to do that. That's what it's going to do. But we're going to make it as Venom Prison as possible at that same time, and just add, so much that's been going on in everyone's personal lives, of what they've been learning in the background and what they've kind of been toying around with and stuff, and just all implement it all into Venom Prison without forcing it and making it oversaturated. And that was the hardest bit, was balancing all of the song writing out with all these new additional layers, and what was too much, what sounded forced. And it was like making it the most natural evolution of Venom Prison as possible, but not writing the same record twice.
I'm curious what the first song you wrote for Erebus was, because I feel like Pain of Oasis is my favourite song you've ever written. I just think it's genius, brilliant, beautiful, harsh. Every great adjective I can think of is that song. If that was first, I feel like it would have set the stall out perfectly for the progression that you have gone on to achieve on the record. Was Pain of Oasis first, or did something come beforehand?
Judges of the Underworld was the first
right, okay, cool.
Judges was, that was the first. Well, it's hard to pinpoint the first one, because if you wanted to go that far back, songwriting never stops for us, really. We just keep writing all the time. And Primeval, with those 2 new songs, were in the project of what Erebus demoing started as.
Interesting. Okay.
So there could have been a possibility that, you know, it could have been vice versa, and Judges would have been on, you know, that Primeval thing as the 2 bonus songs. So yeah, Judges was the first song for Erebus, though, definitely. And I think even with like the dynamics of the record, we already knew how we wanted to like tackle it. I think a lot of us have been listening to so much music at the time, and I think we already had almost like an album layout ready as such, but just kind of had to figure out how to put it all into place and not make any connections that don't sound, you know, authentic as such. You have to all be like super consistent. So it was harder than writing riffs. Like literally was harder than writing riffs.
You mentioned the idea that you write all the time, which is not a foreign object for bands. I mean, that's usually this kind of state of play that we're in for bands at the moment. But the band had been on such a furious pace since 2016, very rarely taking your foot off the gas, whether that's touring, or that's writing. Just curious whether the pandemic kind of forced you to have a welcome pause for reflection and like some space for new ideas going forward. I apologize, you've probably been asked a million questions about the pandemic and how it affected you, etc. But more specifically, I'm just curious whether that kind of 1 year break kind of forced you to pause, think about what you wanted out of this and where it could go.
It was great, like in terms of like reflection and just being able to like sit on songs for longer and just kind of, you know, kind of listening to a song for a week before just making another change to it. Or, you know, me and Ben got synths and we just sat playing on synths all day instead of writing. Like, you know, we both got one each, and just, you know, we were just like enjoying what we were learning as such. Like there were days where I just, you know, turn the synth on and be like, oh, that sounds great. And, you know, and that's where all this element starts to come into Erebus, especially with Ben. Ben spent so much time. I think he's got like fucking 4 of them now. Started Erebus with 1 and now he's got like 4. But I think it's because we just enjoyed learning. Like Larissa was really getting into the idea of clean vocals and singing and all this. And, you know, I think everyone found such a nice balance on Erebus to like not make it corny. It never feels corny or forced.
No.
And like it, that was the one thing that Scott Atkins said when we were like, you know, finishing up the record. He was like, nothing sounds out of place or like corny or stands out is like you know, as a oh no. But everything's very consistent and just seamless. And I think that is, you know, why I like Erebus so much, is because it was the hardest part to make it feel like that rather than the actual riffs as such.
Just got a couple of questions left for you before I let you enjoy your evening, unless another gaming question comes to mind. In terms of like your writing process, I've always felt like the intensity of Venom Prison is obviously such a key theme. And with you having to write separately and not being able to come together for that writing process, was it hard to kind of splice things together and then find that intensity? I'd imagine a recording studio session for you guys would be quite an intense experience with the kind of product that we put out. Was it difficult to capture that same intensity when we're writing and then you're sending it over, they're listening to it, sending you a bass hook back? And I just imagine it's quite difficult to put all that together and have it still sound as intense as it does.
So usually it'll be, I've got my own setup here to demo, and Ben's also got his own little home setup as well. And we basically just write, and I'll, you know, program the drums in, I'll record, you know, the bass, the guitars, everything, and then I'll send the idea over to Ben. Ben will be like, oh, I've got this idea here. If I can just chop this out here, can I add this in? I'll be like, yeah, sure. And then when me and Ben are like, it's finished, then we'll send it to the rest of the guys. And
okay.
Then we'll be like, right, you want to add this? Do you like this? Don't you like this? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, you like it. Now let's add your bass, rather than kind of keep sending me ideas. And then I chop bits out of songs like literally every day sometimes. Like I'm just like going through a song again, like a demo, and I'm like, nope, that can come out. and I'll just fully take like a minute of music out or something. So there's no point me sending it to the guys until me and Ben think it's done, because otherwise I'm just getting them to lay down like bass, or like if Joe will put his electric drum kit into the interface and then I can just get the MIDI back from him. It's a lot of time for him to sit down, learn, write, add to it, for me to just erase it in a day. So I don't put him through that. I just kind of get to the point where me and Ben go, "Yep, is that finished?" And he'll go, "Yeah, I think it's finished." And then we'll give it to the guys, and then that's kind of where it goes from there as such.
Easy to criticize the digital age, and there's a lot that the digital age can be criticized for, but I mean, imagine the position we could be in right now, specifically Venom Prison, if it was 1996. You know, as much as the digital age takes away from society or gives us new problems, it does give on the other hand, doesn't it?
Well, put it like this: if we didn't have this technology, Venom Prison would literally still be on our first EP. Like, this band discovered very, very quickly that it cannot go in a practice room and write together. Like, I'm just playing something, Ben's just playing something, like the drums are just going mad. And then I was always demoing, you know, as well at the same time, but we were using practice rooms when we first started the band. And I remember just saying to Ben, I was like, "Ben, you need to get an interface. We need to just write at home and come to band practice when we actually have something." Because like we were just like, I remember one practice, we played the same riff for like 6 hours, and I was just like,
amazing.
I was like, I can't do this. Like, you know, I could literally have written 6 songs tonight. Instead, we've done this one riff for 6 hours. So we nipped that in the bud really quickly. And then Joe, when Joe joined the band, our drummer, he introduced us. Well, I say introduced us. He was like, "You guys are now playing to click." And I was like, "Oh, wow, that's new." So we all started playing to click live. And now we just practice before a tour, and then or a show like Bloodstock. We just kind of, everyone has the click at home, everyone has all the music, Ben tabs everything out and everything, so everyone's playing exactly the same thing. We've all got the click, so we turn up to the one practice before a festival, and if everyone's practiced at home, then as soon as our drummer counts in that 4, then you should be pretty locked in.
Yeah.
You can always tell pretty quickly who hasn't been practicing. It's kind of how classical would do something very similar, where they just practice the piece at home. They should know the tempo, they should know the thing. And like, I think not from a standpoint of going, "Oh, bands, you should do this," but at the same time, I am kind of going, "Bands, you should do this," especially younger bands, because like they'll spend so much money in their early band stages just trying to make their band work, and sometimes they'll just, you know, practice for God knows how long, you know what I mean? Like there's bands, when I was going to the practice room, like they were there like every single day for like 7 hours in the summer and stuff, and I'd be like, "How the fuck can you afford that? Like that must be so expensive. Like what the fuck?" Like, but I'm not trying to kill the practice room industry. So before they come and like burn my house down, like, but you know, at the same time, younger bands could spend more time just with a little interface and just record at home and just make songs at home and show their friends, and then their friends can just learn them. And it's just productive. It's just productive and more efficient. That's all I can say.
Just before we get into our quick fire round to finish, you've always been like really open in interviews about the idea that you treat Venom Prison kind of as like a family member, in the sense of you want to do your best for it right now in that current moment, and then what happens. At least you know you've done your best. But when we really look at what Venom Prison is in 2022 and what Erebos is definitely going to do for Venom Prison, you're on Century Media, about to release your best record to date, which I'm certain is going to do huge things for you. It's got to be getting almost impossible to not start looking to the future even slightly now. Like, I'm assuming it's getting very difficult to not think, right, okay, I'd love for us to achieve insert achievement in 10 months, because the pace is really picking up now.
Weirdly, no. Like, it's really strange. Like, it's really strange. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm super excited. Like, I am really excited. But it's like I've been speaking to Ben about creative ideas already, like, you know, things to support Erebus. Like, some visual stuff, some more, sound stuff as such, without giving too much away. But like, I'm already like deep into doing that as such, and to kind of like take my eye off that and be present with everything that's going on, especially with like, we've got a record that's on its way. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes with the band, business wise, if that's what you want to say, or admin wise, and then you've got a lot of creative stuff going on as well. It's really hard to think any further forward because there's so much going on now that I just know that the moment I take my eye off it and kind of go, oh, I'm just going to daydream about my future life, then everything in front of me is just kind of fallen to shit because I've just like not been looking at it. And I always like, the guys always just go like, Ash, can't you just be a bit optimistic? And I'm like, I am being optimistic. I am generally being optimistic, but I also do feel that I can't tell where Venom Prison's ever going to go. And that's kind of why I've always really liked Venom Prison, is because I can never fucking tell what it's going to do. Like, we just do the things it needs it to do. And that is be a band, write music, do our touring, festivals, whatever it is, play our shows, all the things that come as a band, photos, videos, all that. And yeah, it's kind of like things just kind of happened, like, that I remember when like Metal Hammer and all that like kind of picked us up, and then we got that award for the best new band thing I never ever set out to do any of that. Like, I never set out to do any of that. I literally just finished in my last band that I was doing before Venom Prison. I was just fucking bored and wanted to play in a band, like a couple of shows with my mates, and wanted to release a demo and an EP. And then before I know it, all like this like mad shit's happening, and apparently we're going on tour with blah blah blah, and magazines are doing this, and it's like, I'm super grateful for it, like I am, but my main focus has always just been to give Venom Prison, what it needs as a band, rather than worrying about everything on the outside as such.
That's fascinating, man. I love the kind of thought process that goes through to Venom Prison. Like, I genuinely thought then you were going to say, yeah, mate, to be fair, I am starting to think about like what we could achieve in the next 6 months. I love that you don't, man. That's the coolest. I love that so much.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's just one of those things, isn't it, where I just feel that everyone wants to think about past stuff, and it's like, we've done great things in the past, and that's cool, and like everyone will go, oh, you're going to do great things in the future, but like those things can't happen if you're not present.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I like that.
Like, like these like wishful futuristic thinkings don't happen by just thinking they happen, you know what I mean? And I think it applies to anything in life. I think if you're in a job where you really like your job and you're going for like a career, like, you do just kind of be very present in that moment and try and achieve whatever you're trying to achieve in that job to get a promotion or whatever it is. And like, it applies to anything. And I just never treated Venom Prison differently,
Dude, this has been the coolest thing, man. I've really, really enjoyed speaking to you. I've wanted to speak to you for quite a long time, so this has been really awesome, man. Just as we finish off here, whenever we do an interview on the Noizze Podcast with a band member, we've got a quick fire round. I'm going to ask you 20 multiple choice questions and see how quickly you can answer them. You will be the first person to do this in 2022, so you're going to set the ball rolling, Ash. When you're ready, we'll start.
Let's go on then. Let's do it.
Batman or Superman?
Batman.
First person or third person shooter?
First person.
Best time of the day?
Oh, morning.
Marvel or DC?
DC.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Trek.
Your favorite non-musical hobby?
Oh, there's so many. Cars, motorbikes, biking, like any outdoor fun shit.
Amazing. Your favorite album of all time? This one always gets people. Your favorite album of all time?
I think Sleeping with Ghosts, Placebo.
Oh, awesome. Your favorite band of all time?
Placebo.
Awesome. Call of Duty or Battlefield?
Call of Duty.
Konami or Capcom?
Oh.
When I wrote that, I thought that's a toughie.
Oh, Konami. It's quick. Konami, I've got to, yeah.
The Witcher or Skyrim?
The Witcher.
The hardest Venom Prison song to write?
Oh God, they're all fucking hard.
They do sound hard to write.
They are all fucking so. Uterine industrialization. I can't even say it myself. That was difficult. Yeah.
Best live show you've ever seen?
Oh, best live show I've ever seen. That's really tough.
That one gets people. That one always gets people.
Oh, I think I'm going to say when I was a kid, I don't remember the specific year, but the fact I'm saying a kid should indicate that it was a long time ago. I went to see Fall Out Boy, and it was when they did "Take This to Your Grave."
Oh, awesome! Album. That's sick.
And they played 2 new songs off from under the Cork Tree.
That's sick.
And it wasn't released, and they were sick. They were
sick. I'm into it.
Super good.
Best live show you've ever played?
Oh God. You're
doing good for time, man. You're doing well. Don't worry. Don't stress about it.
I want to say Bloodstock because we had fire.
That's sick. That's sick.
Bloodstock. We had fire. What
else do you want?
Yeah. Why am I even questioning
this? Soap operas, good or bad?
Huh? Sorry.
Soap operas, good or bad?
Oh, fuck them. They're awful.
They are pretty bad. Your favorite game of all time?
Oh, that Final Fantasy VIII.
Console exclusivity, good or bad?
Good.
Tea or coffee?
Oh, I have coffee in the morning, tea at night. Coffee.
Your favorite TV show, or perhaps the one you're watching at the moment?
Oh, favorite TV show. Oh, that's very tough. Favorite TV show, right? I don't know if it is, so this may change by the time this call finishes. Okay. I really, really, really enjoyed that Hannibal TV series.
Oh, cool. My mum watched that. She had lots of good things to say about that as well. Yeah.
The guy, he's Dutch. Is he Dutch? Max. He played in Death Stranding.
Oh, I know who you're on about.
Max. Is it Max?
I'm sure it's Max.
Yeah,
he's Dutch. He's Dutch. I know exactly. I can picture him right now. He's the main villain in Death Stranding. You think he's the villain until twist at the end. I can picture who he is. I can't think of his last name. But I know exactly who you're on about.
He's phenomenal in Hannibal. Like incredible.
And then finally, the best piece of advice you would ever give someone.
Oh God, I'm never one to take wisdom off. Just don't be a dick. Do you know what I mean? Like
great piece of advice. Great piece of advice.
I could tell you like how to live your life, but you'd probably be like, fuck off. So I guess don't tell me to fuck off and just don't be a dick, and then I won't have to say anything.
Great piece of advice. Dude, this was the coolest, man. I've wanted to speak to you for a long time. Love Venom Prison. Erebos is amazing. I'm really proud of you guys. I can't wait to see what you do for extreme metal in Britain. I'm so happy for what you've achieved. Sky's the limit for what you're going to achieve next. Erebos is awesome. Congratulations. Thank you so much for your time, man. This was sick.
Thank you for having me as well. Thank you.
Dude, I'm going to let you go, man. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.